Robby, what's on your radar?
Well, what else but another case of cancel culture on college campuses? This one is a real doozy. You'll like this story. Last December, Princeton University was slated to host an exhibition of 19th century Jewish American artwork provided by Leonard Milberg, who's a Princeton alum and a patron of the arts, donated over 13,000 pieces to Princeton. But Milberg pulled out of this exhibition due to disagreements with the university. In statements to the Daily Princetonian, a university spokesperson made it sound like Milberg was ultimately responsible for the exhibition not taking place. But both Milberg and the curator, art historian Samantha Baskind of Cleveland State University, tell a very different story. Princeton officials had objected to the inclusion of artwork by two 19th century Jewish Americans who had served as soldiers in the Confederate Army during the Civil War. Quote, Princeton forced the cancellation by canceling the two most important artists. Baskin, that's the curator, she told me. It would be impossible to have an accurate show about 19th century Jewish American art without its most outstanding figure, Moses Jacob Ezekiel. Indeed, a well-known piece by Ezekiel was intended to serve as the centerpiece. That work is called Faith. It's a 64-inch marble statue completed by Ezekiel in 1876. It was commissioned by a Jewish fraternal organization to commemorate the 100th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. A replica currently stands outside Philadelphia's National Museum of American Jewish History. So Ezekiel is a complicated historical figure, sure. He fought for the Confederacy and supported the Southern Lost Cause. A second artist whose work would have also been part of the exhibition, Theodore Moyes, also served in the Confederate Army. Of course, history is filled with flawed people who nevertheless made important contributions to literature, art, science, and philosophy. Besides, the works in question, they had nothing to do with the Confederacy, and anyway, they would have been displayed alongside labels that contextualize the artists and acknowledge their unsavory ties. History doesn't come with neat, sanitized figures, Baskin told me. Princeton canceled exactly the type of show that a university should tackle. Problems arose last October during the planning stages of the exhibition. That's when the university's vice provost for international equity and diversity became involved. The administrator wanted Ezekiel and Moyes dropped. Milberg, who has previously, as I mentioned, contributed a great deal to Princeton's collections, so he opposed the idea of modifying the showcase in order to satisfy the administrator's sensitivities. Once you start canceling things, it never ends, he told the Daily Princetonian. Baskin described Princeton's behavior as an unfortunate anti-intellectual surrender to cancel culture, and she commended Milberg for taking a stand and refusing to sponsor historical revisionism. Quote, he took a very principled stand by choosing not to fund the exhibition after the library took curatorial matters into their own hands. He disagreed with Princeton's decision to censor the show and erase history. Jonathan Sarna, a professor of Jewish American history at Brandeis University, whose work has informed the exhibition, also objected to Princeton's capitulation. The fact that two of the most important Jewish American artists of the 19th century were Confederate soldiers is something that merits conversation, not censorship, says Sarna. Quote, one approach is that we have faith in the audience. We display in full complexity the material and we talk about it, Sarna told the Religion News. The other approach is that we cancel it. I'm very reluctant to be part of the woke, cancel everything that doesn't conform to present-day morals standards. Indeed, an institution of higher education might have expressed curiosity about the intersection of these subjects, the Jewish American experience, the Civil War, and 19th century art, and invited its students to contemplate them. Princeton's impulse, unfortunately, exactly the opposite. Bury the truth. Of course, the issue here isn't really Princeton as a whole, but rather the fact that the relevant decision maker is a risk-averse diversity coordinator. As long as the Office of Institutional Equity holds sway, liberal values like academic freedom, freedom of expression, and diversity of thought will be threatened on campus. Princeton's effort to avoid any potential controversy was at the expense of a tremendous opportunity to show intriguing and exceptional art to their students and to open up crucial conversations, says Baskind. A vital learning moment was lost. And I finally did, subsequent to writing this, get the university to offer comment to me. So a spokesperson for the university said, well, neither the library nor the university caused this exhibit to be canceled. It was canceled by the donor. So they're saying that, yeah, well, the donor canceled it because he pulled out. But he pulled out because you said, well, we will not have this exhibition with these two specific artists, one of whom is the notable artist in this category from this time period, who, yes, was in the Confederate Army. That's a bad thing. We can talk about that. But they actually planned to put signs next to the art explaining that so that you could have a conversation about how how these figures' lives went and what they were a part of. So it's totally ridiculous. And but that's what happened.
And I don't want to give anybody any ideas, but this made me think of Martin Heidegger, whose book, Being in Time, is like the seminal work of continental existential philosophy. Mm-hmm. He was also a card-carrying member of the Nazi Party. So...
No, you're right. This curator gave me a list of, she's like, what about, and she gave me in her comments to me, like a bunch of people who are artists who have been showcased at Princeton who were problematic for ideology, or one was a pedophile, one was like, their work is displayed because we're practiced at separating the art and the artist, or at least contextualizing and discussing them without saying we can't look at their art.
Right, and pretty much anybody from the South prior to during the antebellum period would then, anything that they created culturally would then be off limits to future generations. Did they change their school name, by the way, the Wilson School?
The Wilson School, they're planning to do it, or they've discussed it? I don't know.
I don't know, Kim, what do you think?
I mean, at this rate, we're going to have to bulldoze Europe. I mean, because practically all the monuments in Europe, everything that we go to travel to see in Europe. Yeah, well, and maybe then those that are championing cancel culture, the woke left, I suppose, maybe then they'll start championing the bulldozing down of, like the Arc de Triomphe and practically all of Italy, which was built by Mussolini. And then you got to go after the Palestinians too, because their mosque the materials were donated by Mussolini to build their mosque at the...
Nuke the pyramids. They were built by slave labor.
Right.
Maybe, I think, right?
Probably.
Yes. So, I mean, we could go down this road. The bottom line is that history is history. We're living in modern times. People shouldn't be, I just think it's totally bizarre to say, well, we can't even see this person's work because I don't agree with their personal life, even though their personal life was however many years ago. I mean, do they really think someone's going to look at this piece of art and think, man, I really like this. So what's up with this guy? Oh, I'm going to mimic this guy. And now I'm going to do... Right, exactly.
Right.
It's like if you see a Van Gogh, are you going to cut off your ear? I mean, that's what they're thinking.
Yeah.
That's what it leads to. It's crazy.
And look, this guy's an interesting, right, without endorsing all of his choices over his whole life, right, he served in the Confederacy and he was still, loyal to the lost cause afterward. He eventually moved to Italy, fell in love with Rome, and he died in Rome during World War I. Like, interesting life, right? Imagine a life that spans from the Civil War to World War I. Like, this was the most notable Jewish American sculptor of the time. I think you can learn about those details without becoming evil from absorb. It's crazy. What are they trying to protect against? It's insane.
I wish that we would go back to that time when universities, colleges were all about all the ideas, but that seems to have gone by the wayside.
And it's changed because of this, as I noted. Again, it's not really the college as a whole was like, oh yeah, we can't do this. It's just the diversity consultant gets involved and says, oh, it might be problematic to, what about our HR concerns? What about that kind of stuff? And when that person has the power to decide things like that, it's never going to turn out well.
So William Carlos Williams, author of that famous Red Wheelbarrow poem that everybody loves because you can memorize it.
Yeah.
A fascist. Just a straight up fascist.
Yeah.
And also, as society evolves progressively and each previous generation, becomes written off as regressive, that would mean that basically everything from that time period would be off limits.
Right. Will be off limits soon enough. That if our videos are still on YouTube, they'll be the next generation will say you can't listen to those horrible fascists, Ryan Grimm, Kim Iverson, and Robby Soave.
And they'll be right.
Well, what they're going to do is they're going to check our DNA and see if we're actually related to any of them, and then we're going to be canceled.
Canceled for so many different reasons. Oh well. Well, I'm looking forward to finding out what's on your guys' radars coming up next.